Okay, good evening, and we'll call the July 25th, 2013 meeting of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee to order at 7:06. I'm Mike Mitchell, and we'll start. John, we'll put you on the spot. We'll start. Oh no, we'll start Larry with Larry with our introductions.
Larry Potter, Park Operations Manager.
Scott Archer, Community Services Director.
Denise Kai, Assistant Parks and Recreation Director.
John Benjamin, Clackamas County Road Department.
Joyce Gifford. Lisa Norman.
Brian Watt.
Brian Burke.
Rob Burns.
Sean Datzler.
Okay, great. This is. I was at a family reunion a couple of weeks ago, and this kind of feels like a family reunion. We haven't been here. We haven't been here for a long time. It's great to have a full house. So welcome to our new folks, and welcome back everybody else, and welcome to our guests. First off is approval of agenda from the June meeting. So if anybody can remember the June meeting, is there any additions or changes to the minutes? Or a motion?
Adoption.
Is there a second to adopt?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of adopting the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, citizen comments on issues and items not on the agenda. We don't have any of those, apparently, so we'll move on to general business. And first is Willamette Falls Legacy Project Community Conversation Presentation.
So, committee, I'll give you a little introduction. This is, some of you might know Christina Robertson Gardner. She is a planner with our Community Development Department. And as I'm sure you've all heard, we have some things going on with the old Blue Heron site. And we're working on a community-wide public involvement process to create a vision for that site. And that process is just getting underway. And you're actually, I think, one of the first community groups to hear this presentation. And Christina's probably going to tell you some of this, but the city is going to be doing a number of these. What are we calling them? Community conversations, and just making people aware and gathering input and that kind of thing. And this is a part of that. And we identified the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee as a key stakeholder or a key group in that, because there are going to be some discussions about public open space elements and this type of thing. Plus, obviously, you're just active and interested community members, so there's that as well. So. With that, I'm just going to let Christina take it away, and you'll get more information from her.
Thank you, Scott. Once again, my name is Christina Robertson Gardner. I'm a planner with the City of Oregon City, and I'm the project manager for this year-long phase of visioning and master planning. The former Blue Heron Paper Mill site, which we are rechristening the Willamette Falls Legacy Project. And before we move forward with the community conversations, we like to show the first 3 minutes of a video that Portland General Electric put together last year. And I think it sets a really nice tone for the site, and for people who don't know a lot of the history of the site, it kind of reminds us how special the place is. So we're going to play the 3-minute video, and then we'll commence with the presentation.
Stretched it across the river, and they walked down the river trying to figure out when they wanted to drop the rope and create the Willamette Falls.
Stare for a while, and you sense an atmosphere of promise, of potential.
It was a focal point. It was a gathering spot. It was a place of power. And each culture that has come through got to the falls and stopped and thought about how they could best utilize what nature had created.
With the geology, Willamette Falls elbows 1,500 feet across the river that shares its name.
We can look.
Smooth, there's a toggle switch.
It's on. Hello?
It should be louder. Then it should. It's picking it up.
You get the big screen.
It's on. I just checked the mic. It's, for some reason, though, it's not.
I don't know if you want to try to put this
pretty good at narration. I'll take a crack at it.
The mic's all the way up.
Your best James Earl Jones impression.
Yeah.
Talking to that.
Does it feel refreshing?
Yeah, I know. I'm
Hooked to be there right now.
It's still, it's not, it's.
And a kayak, right?
Sure. Swimming in it.
Sorry. We're like, apologize to the public for all this technical difficulty trying to pause the meeting.
So if we put that line right on it, it has a different.
And we will restart the video.
Stories of comings and goings hang in the mist like ghosts.
Coyote and meadowlark took a rope and stretched it across the river, and they walked down the river trying to figure out when they wanted to drop the rope and create the Willamette Falls.
Stare for a while, and you sense an atmosphere of promise, of potential.
It was a focal point. It was a gathering spot. It was a place of power. And each culture that has come through got to the falls and stopped and thought about how they could best utilize what nature had created.
A fluke of geology, Willamette Falls elbows 1,500 feet across the river that shares its name and rises 4 stories high.
I really believe this is one of the great geological secrets of North America. It is the second largest waterfall in the United States. Volume-wise, the only one being bigger is Niagara Falls. People don't even realize that.
Human history has concentrated around this natural feature in unusual abundance.
Indian people have been at the Willamette Falls since time immemorial. Since thought of human people became conscious, we've been there.
Political and economic power and people's livelihoods have ebbed and flowed at the falls.
This hasn't moved since 1990, and it's still sharp enough to cut trees. God, there was how many million board feet of timber went down this river?
A state was born here, Oregon.
This was the end of the Oregon Trail. This is where people stopped and settled.
And this is where moving water revolutionized how people live. Forever.
There's so many firsts here that have implications not only nationally but globally that changed our way of life. And it all started right in this little mess of buildings that most people just drive by on 205.
Industry rose up around the falls. To the east, in Oregon City, a paper mill. To the west, another paper mill. And one of the oldest power plants in the country. Alongside a historic canal and log system. Altogether, perhaps 100 acres. A small, vibrant laboratory.
This was like NASA. This was like the Silicon Valley, and it really changed the world.
Full screen mode. All right. We can do it. We have the technology. So once again, thank you very much for letting me speak this evening. My goal is twofold tonight. One is to provide you all the updated information on this process so you can speak to your friends and family and neighbors and coworkers, and know that what information you're providing is factual, and also provide the information in a way that creates excitement, creates champions, gets people involved in this year-long process. And the second part of tonight is to have a community conversation where I get to understand the lens of the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee. The survey that you have in front of you, you'll see a 2-page survey. We are actually going to fill this out tonight through a community conversation. And why this is important is I'm going to be taking this home tonight, and I'm going to make sure that I have the information I need. So your thoughts, your views, and your direction can be incorporated into our visioning and master planning, specifically as it relates to being on PRAC. We have the same survey online, and it's now actually going into the opt-in survey program if you belong to Metro's opt-in. But why it's important for you to fill out tonight is you could be more important tonight. If you go to the survey online, or if you are in the opt-in, you're one of many hundreds of people who will fill this out. But here, you get to fill it out as part of the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee, and we'll be compiling your comments, and we'll be summarizing them through our process. So it is very important for you to fill out this form tonight, and we actually may even stop for about 5 minutes at the end and give you time to finish your thoughts. If you can't fill it all out, don't worry, but fill as much as you can out tonight. And next week, if you're in the shower and you have a new thought, go online and please feel free to add to the conversation on our online survey as well. Okay, if you want to go to the next slide. So what is the Willamette Falls Legacy Project? In March of 2011, the Blue Heron Paper Company went bankrupt. Pretty soon after, Metro approached the City of Oregon City and said that this area of the Willamette River is identified on our target acquisition for our open space bond measure. There's almost a half a mile of frontage here, not only what you see, but also the rail spur line that goes down almost to Kenema. So there's a large amount of Willamette River shoreline that's on this property, and that is one of Metro's targeted acquisition areas. Pretty quickly, Clackamas County and the state of Oregon, through the Parks and Rec and the State Historic Preservation Office, got together, and through about a year, we did a lot of due diligence analysis to see if this was something a public agency could take on, knowing how complicated the site was. It went up for sale in September of 2011, and from then until today, it is still for sale. And I'll give you an update on a new request for purchase at the end of the presentation. But knowing that this may be an opportunity to acquire the site, Metro paid for $500,000 of due diligence last summer, which looked at the structural capacity of the existing buildings on site, some initial environmental analysis, the first phase 1 and a little bit of the phase 2 analysis, and trying to get understanding of what the short-term and long-term carrying costs would be for the site. And one of the analysis that was done, and I think was quite illuminating, we did not guess this at the beginning, but academic-wise, we looked at what the cost would be to level the site, all the structures from the main street levels, we call. If you look at the site, it's not all flat. Especially if you see it from the Willamette River, it's almost a continuation of the basalt horseshoe, where it drops pretty quickly from the Willamette River side of Main Street. And there is a lot of basements, sub-basements, pilings. But at this point through the due diligence, we've just looked at just above grade, just above the Main Street level. What would be the cost for demolition if we just demolished the whole site? Not that we wanted to, but what would be the cost for carrying the site for 10 years, keeping all the structures as is? What would be the monthly carrying cost for that? And then kind of in the middle, what would be if we did a kind of surgical demolition, where we looked at retaining some properties that had historic adaptive reuse opportunities, took out some of the properties that were either kind of white elephants, couldn't be adaptive reused, or were just not historically historic buildings are really appropriate for any reuse, some of the truly metal structures. And what we found out is they were all expensive options. And none of them was clearly a better option. So I thought that was really illuminating. They all had their challenges. And that kind of opened a lot of people's eyes up. And we realized there are a lot of challenges on this property. But we had already been doing a lot by just that due diligence, letting any potential future property owner have all the due diligence background information that was performed, providing all of that to the trustee. We have a really good working relationship with the bankruptcy trustee. And pretty quickly, last December, we kind of moved to a Plan B when it was Metro chose not to move forward on a site acquisition. And the trustee was not willing to carve out a portion of the property for open space. The trustee wants to sell the site whole. And that was not something that the public agencies wanted to be involved in. So we quickly transitioned to kind of Plan B, which is what can we do to help continue reducing those barriers for redevelopment on the site. There are actually, why don't you go to the next slide? As you know, the site has extraordinarily historic history, and I like to show this one photo, and especially for people who think they know a little bit about Oregon City and they've been to the end of the Oregon Trail Museum, but they may not know that John McLaughlin's house was originally located on these first 4 blocks of historic Oregon City. This is kind of really, if you think of territorial downtown Oregon City, because downtown Oregon City started at the falls and moved north. And I don't know if Denise, you see there's a hipped roof house that's directly across from the tower of the Oregon City Woolen Mill. It has a little hipped roof and a right there, that is the Phoenix Hotel in that's about an 1890 photo, but that's the Phoenix Hotel, which was once the John McLaughlin house. So for a lot of people, that touchstone feeling of what happened in Oregon City after you spent your thousands of miles crossing the Oregon Trail, you got to Kelly Field. It was mid-October, early November. It was rainy. You were cold. We kind of end the story right there. But there's a whole other part of the story, and that really is kind of the birth of Oregon City, birth of territorial Oregon, and then the state of Oregon. And it really all kind of happened down here. And I think having the site cut off from the community through the campus feel of Publishers Paper, then Smurfit, and then Blue Heron, this is, I think, a really good opportunity as we move forward to be able to tell that part of the story, as well as the Native American history, the industrial history that is on the site as well. This is another amazing shot. There are 5 tribes that have historic ties to the falls. The Yakima Nation, the Umatilla tribe, the Warm Springs tribe, the Siletz Indians, and the Grand Ronde, which is their ceded lands. This is one of the only places you can harvest lamprey. Right here at the falls, the Columbia River currently does not have a lamprey harvesting for tribes. And of course, salmon is a first food of all of the tribes. And so the tribal history is also a very important aspect of as we move forward to tell the story, and as we move forward with public access. So where are we right now? We have, per our agreement with Peter McKittrick, the trustee, who has just made a pretty extraordinary agreement for a bankruptcy trustee whose fiduciary duty is to dispose of assets. It is to not abandon the site before April 2014, to support and sign any land use application that comes in front of him for next spring to rezone the property from its current zone of industrial to a new zone. And so we're on a really, really tight timeline because of this. So what we are doing this summer is we're having these big visionary community conversations about kind of really moving forward. It's year 2035, big picture. What do you want to see on the site? What's your lens? What's your focus? And then that'll be distilled down through the fall and winter into some concept alternatives, into a preferred plan, which will go in front of the Planning Commission next spring. And it is the goal to create a framework plan that has that balance between flexibility and certainty. So if you want to move the next slide. And I think a lot of people get a little confused about these two planery, wonky terminology, but The vision strategy is what's it going to create champions for the project? How are we going to move from this PowerPoint that I'm doing this year to a fully developed space that has economic development, open space, habitat restoration, and cultural and historic interpretation. And we need to have a vision strategy that galvanizes support, creates champions, and identifies clearly early on catalyst projects that can move the project forward. What needs to happen also is the property needs to have a zone change from industrial to something else. Currently, the site has been dismantled over the almost last 2 years by a company called NRI Global. They've been taking down all of the paper machines, all of the pipes, a lot of tanks. Basically anything that's not a structure has been removed from the property. And so it is not a turnkey opportunity for even a new industrial use. It's really in a place where without a zone change, without a robust plan, this site could stay vacant for 20 more years. So we know that we need to move forward, and as you know, changing a zone is sometimes very complicated, and this is changing from an industrial zone to some types of mixed-use zone, which will allow additional uses. We have to work with the Oregon Department of Transportation. As you can imagine, it's on a bit of a peninsula. We have some intersections that we need to look closely at, including 5th and Main, looking at the tunnel, looking at our 205 interchange. And that is just one of the kind of critical points that have to be done. And all of this really needs to be done, I think, before any traditional developer is going to come in and plop down the money we want to see. So we see as our role as government as what can we do to reduce those barriers so when development comes in to implement the vision, they're spending money on the buildings and the things we want rather than the $25 million operational costs that need to be upgraded for infrastructure. That's the things that we can do as a public so we can get to the place where private development can come in. So a framework master plan, if the vision's really big picture, framework master plan is slightly more specific, but still very big. Think bubbles, think highlighted areas, think this generally is where the open space would go. These are generally where the blocks can be reintegrated and the right-of-ways can be brought back. This is generally where the floodplain area is, where we see there's opportunities for infill and new construction. This is generally what the ODOT will require for mitigation. Big picture like that, not where the restaurant's going to go or what specific business model will fit. The zoning will probably allow a lot of different uses, and they'll need to have that flexibility between certainty and between certainty and flexibility. And I like to think of it almost as a scale. So when people come in next spring and they look at the final master plan that will be adopted, if we create too much certainty, in a sense you could also call it overregulation, if you create too much certainty for the site, we have pushed out a lot of really good development opportunities that we may not have known about. If we create too much flexibility on the site, we may lose our champions for the project, and we may lose our momentum, and we may not get quite the development quality or type that we were all envisioning. So it really is almost threading that needle of finding that perfect balance between certainty and flexibility. And that's what my job will be this whole year, is when we get all of these wonderful visions and this great direction for the community, how do we distill that into a bit of a wonky land use plan that can ride that balance? Because if we adopt a plan that's out of balance either way, I really see it's a definite threat to moving the project forward. So we have these 4 values that has been agreed upon by all 4 partners, and the 4 partners again are the City of Oregon City, Clackamas County, Metro, and the State of Oregon through its Regional Solutions Office, and state parks. And those are public access to the falls, economic development, healthy habitat, and cultural and historic interpretation. And I really, after 2 years, I've been really appreciative of these 4 values. I think they're very encompassing and very good. And we see these really as synergistic values, where a project that has a robust public access and really good cultural and historic interpretation can only help economic redevelopment opportunities and so forth. So it's kind of a rising tide helps all boats. We really see that if this project is completed to the level we want, all 4 of those values should be fully developed. Not saying that any one particular piece on the site, there may be a value that, rises up a little bit more if you're relating to habitat shoreline restoration versus in a structure or access for a walkway. That's where we can get into the details. But overall, those 4 values should all be shared in importance. So here's 2 pieces of update information for you this summer. The first is the legislature loves us, so that's great. We received a $5 million commitment for lottery-backed bonds by the legislature a couple weeks ago before they finished their session. And it originally was a 2-to-1 match where if this partnership could come up with $10 million of public and private money for hard costs, not consultant fees, but moving dirt, like clearing land, building infrastructure, hard cost, that the lottery-backed bonds would pay to help kick in $5 million more. The last week before the legislature approved it, they removed the hard match of the 2-to-1, and they went more with a process where we need to submit our kind of economic strategy to the governor's office for them to sign off. Because the last thing anybody wants is we spend $15 million, help clean up the site, and it sits there for 7 to 10 years because we didn't quite have a good understanding of what was needed. So everyone is very supportive of that. And those lottery-backed bonds I really don't become active till spring of 2015. So we have a little bit of time to kind of get our house in order before we move forward on that. The second is there is currently an offer for the property. Eclipse Development LLC out of Irvine, California has submitted a bid in early June, and they are in a due diligence period. And because this is a federal bankruptcy, everything is public knowledge, which is kind of unique for a property transfer. We're used to everything being done, in secret, but everything is completely open. So there is an overbid period. The Eclipse Development put in a $4.1 million offer. Right now, with no contingencies, they'll finish their due diligence period. They may choose to add contingencies to the sale. There may be an overbid by another development interest. Eclipse Development could purchase the property and move forward and be the final developer. They could flip and sell the property. So the end kind of direction is we just don't know. We won't really know till the end of August about the initial offer, but we anticipate this property may sell once or twice before it's we fully move forward for development. It could be somebody could become a master developer and then sell off parcels to smaller developers. We just don't know. So people have asked, well, how are you reacting to this one developer? And I guess this is my key point to give to people is we're in a fantastic place right now. We have a property that's zoned industrial that needs to go through a public process for approval. We are creating the narrative and storyline this year. We're creating the vision, and we kind of have control of the process a little bit. Now, once again, if they get out of balance, we don't want that balance to be off. But we are in a really good place right now, and we can use this year to create future champions for the project, be it the public, but also developers as well. So I like that Eclipse Development has moved forward. It says that they believe that this is a viable project. They may end up not fully purchasing the site, but I think it's encouraging that we have someone right off the gate before the property is even zoned willing to look forward and potentially purchase the site. So tonight, what I'd like to do tonight is start the community conversation survey that you'll have here. And what I'd like to do is, and if Denise, would I mind putting you on the spot to do a little bit of writing? While we're talking, I'd also like you to to be writing in your own responses, and then we'll probably do about 5 minutes of quiet time while you can finish up your responses, and I'll take your forms here. And usually I'm the curmudgeon-y planner that's always thinking the technical, but I get to take that hat off tonight, and I get to be the visionary citizen when I'm asking these questions. So think big picture, think 2035, think what's your lens, what do you just absolutely would love to see on the site? And that's what really this summer is all about. When we get down to the framework master plan and we get down to some of the details, some things may filter out because it's just not the right time in the process. But we really need to understand this summer, are we moving in the right direction? Do we have a common community goal or vision of this site? And that's really what we need to do. So this is your dreaming hat is being put on tonight. So think of it that way. And kind of the first question I'd like to look at, it's 2035, and you're taking someone out for lunch. What do you envision for this site? If anyone wants to.
Well, I could see a place, and I really like the 4 kind of, what did you call them, goals you have? Or
values.
Values. I think that's really what the site needs. I guess if I take that, I think of it like a boardwalk where you can go and eat lunch, at the same time walk along the riverside and enjoy the views of the river at the same time as you're eating your lunch.
And when you're finished with lunch, there's a kayak rental. You can get in the kayak and, spend the afternoon on the water.
It doesn't have a lot to do with lunch, but to me, whatever's on that site, the most important thing to me is that it somehow unifies the Old Town part of Oregon City and the Kanema area. This city is full of wonderful assets, historical, cultural, recreational, but it's really hard to get from one to the other. And this site could somehow, it's going to take a group of wizards to make it happen with 99 and the railroad track and the river and all that. But to unify downtown to that site, to Kanema, this is a once-in-a-lifetime deal. I mean, whatever the specifics are that's on that site, to me, it's more important how it relates and brings in the other parts of the city.
Is there a railroad spar that's still on the site?
There is. And actually, Scott, would you mind going back to maybe the second slide, which is a nice aerial?
Oh, with the 7 on,
There we
backward
go.
7? Okay.
So the railway spur, as you look down, and actually I'll if you see the Z that goes through the property, that's the PGE dam, which is not part of the property. And that kind of it moves forward. The lagoon, which is actually between the two property, is actually part of the property till about the part where the PGE dam does a U. And the other part of the site is the spur line, which almost goes all the way down to the very north end of Kanema. There's portions where the spur line is 20 feet wide and separated by the main line by a 15-foot tall wall. And then over time, that 15-foot wall gets lower and lower and lower and lower, and then you're at grade with the line, and you're feet away from it, and you're feet away from the Willamette River edge. So there is definitely a gap. We walked it and we thought, this is great, we can walk to not Kanema. I mean, so there is definitely this gap that's probably about 200 feet long that's just going to be really, really hard to do as a pedestrian along the spur line. So that's that creative thinking. How do we cross that gap? How do we connect to Metro's open space?
Building a pedestrian bridge, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
I've thought about this for a long time. Ever since I heard that it was coming up for sale, and even back when I was a kid, thinking about things to do out there. Seems like Oregon City's always wanted to draw people. We don't get the tourism. We just don't get people. We do all the projects in downtown, and we still can't get the people down there. Probably about 8 years ago, I went to Europe, and traveling through Europe, and I can't remember where it is, but there's a sky bridge, and it goes across a fall, And then from the fall, you break down and you go right along the fall itself, and there's little openings in the rock walls that you can see the falls. So I've always thought, if you could get a sky bridge that goes across, that starts drawing money in. And then I go to, like when we were in Nevada, where they'd have the shootouts in the street, you know, with the old wooden floors that are still on the sides, and all the frontage is done up like, you know, just like the old times. I think that's what we need. We've got to draw people here, and the end of the Oregon Trail Museum doesn't do it. If you could take that and move it down, bring back Kelly Field, because that was a sore subject. But seriously, I mean, if you get everything into place, people will come here. I mean, we have so much history, and you can tie it in. And, you know, to get to Kenema, couldn't you go over the top of the hills? I know that what I've always been told is that that's Indian burial ground up top, that there's artifacts up there. PGE owns that.
Well, there is a substation, and then Metro has purchased a fair amount of land just south of Kenema, actually right next to Kenema's
Right.
Children's Park, as you go almost all of the cliff area that you see from South End Road.
Because you've got the access coming up and over 99 to the pub. And then if you could connect it from there over by J&M, you could access down into Kenema. But that sky bridge, the sky bridge I think would be sweet. It would just open everything up. And then just connecting all the history into downtown. You could draw lots of people.
Somebody else, before we move on to the next question, in your dream, what could this site become? In your dream scenario?
I could envision, having visited St. Louis, where the big arch is the beginning of the westward movement, and people flock in there by the thousands. They have programs daily, and piggybacking on what John said, I could see the end of that with some kind of a monument or something like the one in St. Louis. What would that be?
One of this kind of gets more, especially to your expertise on PRAC, but one of the conundrums of the site, I think it's an opportunity, but some people think of it as a conundrum, is the falls have varying views based on the season you're in. And on the nicest, most wonderful day in July, which we just had, where it's 85 and all you want to do is go out on a beautiful deck and have a programmed event, the falls are barely there. And when it is late February and it's 38 degrees and pouring, the falls are out there most magnificent. So how do we program this space and this place so it is a four-season destination? And that's definitely something that we've tasked our consultant team, Walker Macy, to look at, is how do we make sure that people are coming here all year long? So I'd love to hear any thoughts or kind of your view on that.
Well, I think that's where the mixed-use thing comes in, where there's residences, there's restaurants, you know, hotel rooms, whatever. So, not that the falls are an afterthought, but that it's not the only reason to go there is not because of the falls. And I think it's pretty when it doesn't have water roaring over it too. But if you give people a reason to be there 24 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of all of the different things that are there, and not just the falls, whether it's the history or, you know, the industrial, the Oregon Trail history and the industrial history of the site.
I like what you had to say, Mike. I agree. As a taxpayer too, I really want to see some of that bring in some revenue to the city. We lost as a city a huge lot of money, and we obviously, being on the Parks Committee, we know that that's how we maintain our parks is with taxes. So, but I don't want to see the whole thing go that way either, if possible. That's why I really like this mixed use, and I think you're right on to something. Is summertime. This can be a great place to come and bring your family, bring friends, be a destination for people all over the place. Depending on what we bring, we could be a great destination. And then, in the wintertime or in the fall, or it seems like 9 months of the year when it's raining, have another reason to go there. And maybe you can make it where you have your shops on the bottom and your living places, apartments on the top floors, or however it looks. I don't know. But something to go there for more than just dining, more than just historical stuff. There's lots of reasons to go there.
One thing I failed to mention in my presentation, we've had a really good working relationship with Portland General Electric. They own not only the dam, but also really the Hawley powerhouse that platform that was taken down a couple of years ago as part of their FERC relicensing. But it is the most amazing precipice to stand on to watch the falls. And they have been very supportive of future public access to their property as long as it stays within their operational constraints and FERC relicensing for fish passes. So for just for people to know, while the closest place to view the falls is not on the property, there's a very good neighbor who's very interested in being involved in this process. Anybody else have any other comment on the kind of how to best use the site question?
Did anybody mention that big box stores wouldn't be necessarily welcome?
Yeah, well, that's definitely one of the questions on the second page, which I'd like to get all of your responses about what you think should not be on the
Wrote down
site.
trails, public access, mixed use with business shops, cafes, residential, including condos and apartments. I think those have all been mentioned, but
One thing I've been thinking about is not just Kenema, but also current Main Street. So if you make something really nice on one end, what happens to the current Main Street? So I think whatever we do, we need to be thinking about that.
Absolutely. I think making sure that whatever happens on this site is integrated and connected as one linear Main Street is very important. And it's one of my high goals of the project. And I think a lot of people think 99 is hard to cross, and I totally disagree. I do it all the time. So I think having an active use on north and south of the 99E Main Street intersection is very doable. And this was the first 4 blocks of historic Oregon City, and I think we owe it to reintegrate it back to its northern neighbors. So there's some question regarding to how best we honor the history of the site. And I'd like to get your lens on that a little bit through not only future open space planning, but how do you see this project moving forward and honoring that multiple site history in a way that would make you feel proud?
Well, I'll start on that one. I think, first of all, there has to be a historical aspect to the new structures. We can't go in and have a building that looks like a modern high-rise. It needs to fit the rest of downtown. I would think a smart developer would look at downtown and say it's mostly a 2- and 3-story building, Main Street, and in keeping with that, maybe there's height restrictions. Some people put cars below grade if there's opportunities, so you have more space, so you're not seeing large parking lots. Since I'm speaking, my opinion on the last one, I've been tossed all around for years. I thought it should be mixed use, and I envisioned retiring and moving into one of those condos and looking at the falls. But I also have to say that a few months ago, at reading the articles, I really thought there was going to be momentum for it to be a state park. And then I realized the state would be stupid to not make it a state park. So that's really been kind of a disappointment now looking at that not happening, even though I liked the other idea first. So, but I think there has to be a continuity, like everybody else has said, but that's a visual, a structural, and historical. I also think that when you go to Fort Stevens State Park in Oregon, you look at foundations and you teach your kids what these buildings were. So I'm sure there's a few identified pieces out there that need to remain kind of locked away from construction so that we can teach our kids and our grandchildren what that was.
Part of the historical is the connections, like Old Kenema and other parts of Oregon City. So the trails and the linkages and those type of connections, I think, should not be overlooked either. So to make it not just integral with Main Street, but also integral with Oregon City itself.
So this is kind of the converse to the first question. It's 2035. What would make you really disappointed to see on the site?
Brownfield.
Blue hair and the way it sits today.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing.
Nothing
done.
Yeah.
Anything that ruins it.
Not having access.
Good point.
Feels like a military base right now. You can look over the fence, but you can't walk to it.
In fact, that was what I had already written down. Gated industrial. That's what I don't want to see there. Nor do I want to see a modern lifestyle center.
That has been an often reply from a lot of groups. So, just real briefly for response to the state park question. In the future, through this master planning process, where the open space is identified, it's the goal to have a public entity acquire that portion of the property that's been identified in the master plan. Will it be state parks? Will it be Metro? Will it be a new third-party created entity? That's yet to be seen. But the goal is that through this master plan process, a clear area identified for a future park will be one of the end results. And the goal is that would be potentially purchased from the new property owner. And any developer's got to know that a robust regional/state park directly abutting their economic development property is a good thing. So, for the most part, that is a very symbiotic relationship. And a lot of the property that could potentially be identified as in the floodplain, there's a fair amount of floodplain. The site not only has part of the 100-year floodplain, we also in Oregon City brought in any 1996 inundation area that was in addition to the 100-year floodplain. And because this is so close to the falls, it is even more complicated because our floodplain elevation in Oregon City is 50.5 feet tall. So if you think you're at Spicer's and Tony's Fish Market, and you remember where you were, that's about 50.5 feet. Well, there are areas near the falls that flooded as high up as 60 feet. And it's just how the hydrology worked, how the site worked, how the flood happened that year. So we're trying to learn a lot more about that and how that affects future development and the size of the floodplain and open space. Any new structures in the floodplain need to be above the base flood elevation or the flood line, as we determine as we go through this process, since the site's unique. If you were an historic structure, either locally designated or on the National Register, you have some ability to rehab the property within its current place. But if you are not a historic structure or not building a new structure, you can't do substantial upgrades to your building if it's in the floodplain. So there are some areas that it'll be a little more obvious about what could be brought in for open space. And yeah, I think everyone is really hoping that we can get that great balance between open space and economic development where it becomes a legacy-worthy project. So what else would make you disappointed in your vision if it was developed or not developed on the property? Anybody else? Okay. Well, what I'd like to do now, if we could take maybe 5 minutes to allow you to finish your survey. And Denise, if you want to take one more slide. We actually will be at the First City Festival on Saturday all day from noon until 9 p.m. We have our booths right at 8th and Main by the Caulfield House. We'll be doing some interactive planning and some pretty neat family-friendly activities. We'll also be walking people down to the front gate of the site. We can't go in for public tours, but we're walking to the front gate, and we have an interactive activity in the parking lot to really look at the different uses that could be on the site. So I encourage everybody here and everybody who may be watching to come down to the First City Festival on Saturday. We hope to come back to this group as we move forward with some plan alternatives in October and November. So you'll see me or another person on my project team again, so we can get your kind of pointed direction on some different ways of looking at doing a framework master plan based on what we heard this summer. I also really recommend that you head to our website, which is on some of your handout material, which is www.rediscoverthefalls.com. We also have a Facebook page. You can like us. We have produced a photo of the day page, which a lot of people are really liking. Through the help of the Clackamas County Historical Society, we've gotten access to a lot of their digital archives. And they also have been the new owners of the Blue Heron Historic Photo Archive Collection, which involved Publishers Paper, Hawley, and Smurfit. So we have a lot of historic photos of the site, and we'll be presenting those each day. So through this year, if you belong to the Facebook page or you head back to the site every few weeks, you can get a pretty neat education on the structures of the site, the background of the site, and learn more about the industrial heritage of the property. So when people have asked, how can I help this summer beyond filling out this form? And really, in the day and age we live in, and social media and talking to friends, sometimes as simple as liking a Facebook page or sharing an historic photo you find particularly compelling this year to your friends, which will then make them go, rediscoverthefalls.com, what's that? And they click. And it's just how we get the word out, how we get the public galvanized to support the next steps. So I'm here also to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Are there hazardous waste that needs to be cleaned up from the site?
Great question. The initial environmental analysis did identify some environmental cleanup in the tail races, and with the property by the early 70s, Publishers Paper had combined their production effluent, their process water, and their stormwater together. And they sent it to the clarifier, and they pumped it to the ponds over in West Lynn. And for all this time, no stormwater or effluent has been released on our side of the Willamette River. It's all been sent over to the West Lynn ponds and cleaned and then sent out. So what we found is very, very targeted areas of cleanup. Also, this site has does not have two things that make environmental cleanup go from doable to not doable, and that is heavy metal and soil. So one of the bonuses of being a paper plant on basalt is a lot of, paper was a lot of organic materials and organic chemicals, as well as we're on basalt. There's not a lot of native soil. And we also flood about every 20 years for the history of the industrial site. So be it where it may, that has lessened the potential. And what we like to think, not that there aren't building after building of asbestos siding, not that there aren't 60-year-old Liberty Ship boilers on the property, which there are, which is a neat side story, but those are quantifiable remediation, whereas heavy metals and soil totally takes a project from 10 million to 200 million. So it's that quantity, that order of magnitude, which has now kind of been resolved a little bit through this environmental analysis. And one thing Metro is looking at doing is potentially getting a future purchaser agreement. So it's kind of getting ready. So when a future person purchases the property, they will get basically a sign-off from DEQ that they're not held responsible for the prior work once they've done their cleanup and remediation. So these are other things that the public sector can do to help move that forward. Any other questions?
I think one of the really positive things is the people that I talk to about this, everybody wants to see something happen. So at least you're not in a situation where you got a lot of inertia and everybody thinks, it's okay the way it is.
Yeah.
No, everybody knows what a wonderful opportunity it is, and that something's got to happen. So I don't think it's going to be that hard to get a lot of enthusiasm behind whatever the plan is.
I absolutely agree. And also everyone viscerally knows that this is complicated. And there's going to have to be some compromise. But the risk of it failing, no one wants. Because no one wants to sit and look at a decaying paper mill for the next 20 years. And then also mourning what could have been. So it is a unique galvanizing effort that I've never been involved in. So.
Is there any activity across the river?
Westland Paper is a separate paper company. They were previously in Crown Zellerbach, if you know that, but they're on now at Westland Paper. They make glossy print for like magazines and catalogs. They use different type of, uses clay, different type of, and they are moving forward. They've invested in their plant. To the south is Portland General Electric, which owns and operates the Sullivan plant, which is the oldest continually operating hydroelectric plant in the nation. They are committed. They've been FERC relicensed through 2024. So you have on that side of the river 2 active industrial uses that are not going away anytime soon.
Okay. Just wanted to mention that we talked about different times of the year the river has different looks and features, but every morning at 5 o'clock, I live up by Rivercrest Park. My bedroom window is open and I can hear the falls all year long. So I can hear them anyway.
That's great. Well, I really appreciate everyone taking the time tonight, and we will be back. And I know, have we been able to take PRAC on a tour of the site yet?
No, not yet.
That's one thing we are outreaching to our Oregon City stakeholder groups. You can work with Scott, and we do tours of the property for stakeholder groups. Right now, they're generally, the easy ones are Friday mornings from 10 to noon, and we might, we'll work with Scott if we need to work on a site visit during or right before one of your monthly meetings.
Definitely.
Something that the majority of the group is interested in, just let me know. Like maybe right now, looks like that's probably the case.
Yeah.
And
See a lot of nodding heads.
Yes, please.
We'll see if we can get something set up at some point.
Absolutely, because I think being there, it changes people's feeling. They understand what 500,000 square feet of building feels like, and it's a lot. So we're going to take about 3 more minutes and let you finish out, and then I'll grab your forms.
All right.
So we're going to pause the meeting for the general public, and then we'll be right back.
Okay, welcome back. We're going to deviate from the agenda for just a moment and hear from our mayor, Doug Neely.
Taking a break from the concerts in the park, of course, that's one of the major activities that the park's program puts us on every year. And I've come in to, first of all, offer an apology, one without an excuse, another one with the excuse. I missed the 2 meetings at which the interviews occurred, and actually I've never done that before. And the first one, there was no good reason for it. The second one is I actually had a meeting that I had to attend, but I did want to welcome Sean back after some kind of hiatus back to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. His participation earlier on in my commission years was very well accepted. Joyce, who I know, and I'm glad to see you on board. John, I'm pleased to see you on board, and it's good to see a full board operating. You can tell that this is an exciting time to be working on the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. There will be public access. How it comes together is going to depend on how we can view various things to coming together, but it makes no sense not to have public access to the second highest waterfall flow in North America, and we've been denied that for 150 years, and so we create this opportunity. Of course, it's going to be a long-term project, but all of us are going to be able to claim ownership in this project, and I'm just so pleased that we're getting you all involved at the very onset of the project, and look forward to great things happening. So thank you for the new members, and thank you for the contribution of all of you.
Thank you.
I won't stick around. I do want to hear the concert.
That's kind of a tactical error on our part to have our meeting night on concert night. I don't know how we got that.
Well, it only happens about 1/4 of them all.
Right.
So it's not that bad.
I think it's usually only one concert, because
Right.
usually we don't have a meeting in August, so
Right.
We
not
got
too bad.
volunteer recognition coming in, which I hope you all.
Yes.
Should have all got stuff in them.
Yeah, so.
Should have
So
received
even if
it.
you're going to have a meeting scheduled at that time, you're going to have a holiday from it.
That's right. That's right. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to a student project proposal from Michelle Rizzo concerning DC Latourette Park. Michelle, welcome.
Hi. Thank you for having me. I had all of my computer glitches before I came, so I have a very, I guess, old-fashioned way of proposing, and I only have 4 copies.
Okay, we can share.
And the designs that I have are in my sketchbook because the scans on my computer shut down, which is awful. So, first I'll introduce myself. My name is Michelle Rizzo. I am a student at Portland State University. This is my project that I'm taking on. It's a summer independent studies, and it's my key to graduating. So no pressure on you guys. But, so it's through the social art programs, or the social art practices program through Portland State University, which is not my major. My major is actually studio art and art history, but this tends to work with this project. I'm trying to keep it quick because I know that you guys have a packed schedule. So DC Latourette Park, I'm assuming all of you guys are familiar with it. It looks the same as it did when I graduated high school about 12 years ago, and even then it looked really run down. So I've always kind of wanted to do something to just revamp it and just take it on as a project of something to do. And with social art practices, the program is basically like, I can have whatever visions I want, but it doesn't matter. I have to go and talk to the community, and whatever the community wants, that's what I want to try to make happen. Which I think is perfect for this, because it actually made it a lot easier, because I was envisioning huge things, and the community wants it to stay the same, pretty much. So I went and talked to, either talked to personally or left a flyer at their house with contact information for me to everybody within a 2-block radius of the parks. Plus I hung out at the park for a while, just getting different people who actually use the park, trying to get their feedback on it. And it really surprised me that they basically want to keep it the same. I was expecting them to want like kids playground stuff there, but there's that school with all the little kids stuff that is within 3 blocks of there. So there's just a couple things that they wanted to change on it, and so I wanted to bring that to you to see if you guys would okay me to be able to take these projects on. So instead of being a huge project, it ended up being like, and a lot of the community wants to get involved in doing these projects also. So it's just basic things. There's a list on there. A lot of it is repairing things that may, in my vision, seem like a safety hazard, and a lot of them are really easy fixes that it's going to basically be finding material cost, because the community said that they would, if I scheduled work parties on Saturdays or whatever, like 1 or 2 of them over the summer, that they would be willing to come and work and help out to fix up this park. So it's kind of a 3-part project. One of them will be the work parties of just fixing up different parts of the chain link fence that need to be reconnected and pieced back together. There's some masonry work that I had a contractor out today kind of quoting me on it, on how much it would cost to fix it. And he said that with the community help, he could do it with materials for less than $200. Be able to fix the ramps up to the stairway because there's like chunks, cinder blocks that are missing out of it. And different things like that, that if you guys approve me to be able to go on with this project, I'll be searching out grants to be able to pay for these things. And also the wall, it's a wall, I think, is what it's meant to be, in between two half basketball courts. That was one of the biggest complaints because it pops balls because the nails keep popping out. With the contractor that I had there, he said that the wall itself is structurally sound. Some of the boards will have to be replaced, but just putting screws in and taking the nails out and it'll solve the problem. Just simple things like that seem like it would be a huge undertaking, but if we can get 15 people there on one day, then we'd be able to take on a lot of the stuff. So that's the main part of it. The other side things are I've been working with the summer camps through Eastham, which is the school district summer camps basically. And I've designed a mural of working with the kids, possibly putting on one of the walls in the park that right now is just concrete. Because my vision on parks, this one kind of looks like a prison yard to me, or like an inner city park. So if we add color to it and excitement to it, then I think that more people would be willing to go there and have more fun there. And if you put murals on a wall, especially if kids are involved, it's less likely to get tagged or vandalized in any way. So I have designs for a mural that I would like to have the approval of putting up there, and having the kids paint the majority of it so that they are aware of this park. And then the third part is working with not the same group of kids, but the same program at Eastham. It'll be the younger ages, along with the senior living facility in the area, and having them work together on 2x3 wood panels. There'd probably be about 6 to 8 of them made, and just post them on the outside of the park, just so that it's some community art that they invested themselves in, and from the outside you'll actually be able to see that it's a park and that it's a fun area. So those are the 3 basic things that I am proposing. This first sketch that I'm going to pass around is a sketch of how some of the things that I want to change at the park, which basically one of the huge complaints, I'm bouncing around all over right now, but one of the huge complaints was the entryway to Ladder It, where there's the 2 tennis courts right next to each other. Having the entryway open there, the court on that side, the balls are constantly going down the Oregon City Hill, which they don't stop. So nobody ever uses that tennis court, and having tennis courts right next to each other, I mean, they just have one chain link fence that is the net going across. Having them right next to each other, nobody ever plays right next to each other anyway, because you're going to be bouncing balls in each other's courts. So one of the things that I would like to do is cut it down to just one tennis court. I've already contacted the Tennis Association of America to try to get a grant to be able to pay for relining of the court so we can actually see where the lines are, and possibly help pay for a net to go up there, just for the one side. And then on the other side, I was thinking we could paint like Foursquare and hopscotch things to just for added fun things to do. Yeah, so I will go ahead and stop talking and pass this around. So the first one you can kind of see is just a sketch. It's not to scale. I'm not that talented. Of just what I'm envisioning it to look like, which is just basic fixing up of what is there. And then the other one, this is my proposal for the mural that would go on that back wall. It's just kind of simple. It's probably the only mural in Oregon City that is not completely historic, but I also wanted to have like the parks and the environmental side brought into it. So there's those 12. I'll go ahead and pass them around so you guys can see.
Thank you.
And I apologize for not having separate copies.
That's good.
So yeah, so as you're passing that around, do you guys have any questions? I've been babbling for a while now.
If you have kids playing hopscotch in close proximity to a tennis court, are you thinking about a fence down the center?
I was thinking about that also, but no, mainly because of funding, and also because the people that usually use this court, because the asphalt is older and it's cracking, and the people that use this court as there's probably about 4 different people that tried to explain it to me in different ways, and one of them said that there's the really good tennis courts in Oregon City, and there's the really, really bad ones, and this is like one of the in-between, where you don't have to feel like you're really good, but you can still use the ground as an excuse to not be good.
Perfect.
So there's not anybody not very many people at least that I've seen that go there like competition-wise that are going to be hitting it really hard and really not paying attention to what's around them. So it is probably a little bit of a safety hazard having it that close to it, but I just figured it would be more of a multi-purpose thing, and that way if they are worried about the balls, then they can go up to the basketball area.
Larry, do you have any kind of feel for how often both of those tennis courts might be used at the same time?
I've seen it used about 3 times in 10 years.
Either one of them?
Both of them?
Okay.
It's not a heavily used court.
You were one.
Yeah.
But I'm there.
The last 10 years.
I'm there during work hours, so I can't speak for the evenings or weekends.
That's one of the oldest parks, is it not? A very old park.
Yeah, it was built in the 1920s. It was originally a swimming pool,
Yeah,
and then in the
right.
1960s they filled it
It was
in.
the original site of the first pool. Brian can probably talk about the tankers
It's
and all
called
that
the
kind
tank,
of stuff.
actually,
Yeah.
the tank.
Other way. Was it over there?
Well, I think your idea on the art is really good from a personal experience. My Eagle Scout service project was something very similar around a bathroom that was often tagged, and the bathroom was never tagged again until it was demolished years later. So I think that's a really neat idea.
So
What?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Brian.
I was
Please
just
go
going to
ahead.
ask where I missed the part of where this mural, you're proposing this mural be painted.
There's on the thing it shows, it's the back wall, because there's the tennis court area and then there's a little raised area, and it's that back wall of the raised area. It almost looks like it's supposed to be a garden up there.
Yeah, that's where the changing rooms were.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think,
Should you?
you know, the changing rooms were still there when I grew up on Madison Street. They were still there. The tank was, of course, gone. The water was out. But, you know, as a child, I wondered, what are these rooms here? What is this little low? Interesting. I was just the only thing I have to comment on, or something, you know, even remotely significant, I guess, is a little bit more of the history of what it used to be, you know, and I know that everything costs money, but maybe something designating what it originally was, and or maybe a piece of that mural, you know, depicting the tank. That's just an idea. I don't want to get you off track.
Could that
No,
be
it's
one of
funny.
the signs on the outside that she was talking about, though, too?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think it actually says in there too that in the signs, the main theme of those paintings was going to be like play and sports and leaning towards the park theme. But one of the original sketches that I had also was trying to make it so that third graders could paint like 1920s style swimmers. Because I was going to try to go through and have like 1920s style basketball players, but I just couldn't figure out how to make it relate and have third graders paint it. But yeah, I think that would be a great idea if we could have that included somehow.
If you want to try to connect some of those dots, Michelle, we have, I think, courtesy from you. Weren't you the one that sent us all that historical info, Brian, a while back? Or
That was probably Tim. Tim Wall.
yeah, from somebody from our swim team at our current pool. But we've got some kind of like a PDF of a few pages of a story plus a bunch of pictures, sort of the history of that site with the pool, and then some historical pictures that if you wanted to utilize that, we could get that to you, and maybe that could be incorporated in, and we could help do something as well and put a little plaque or something up if we wanted to go that route. But I like the idea of maybe incorporating it into the art as well. I think that's neat. So anyway, but we can give you
unique.
that.
It's pretty unique. It would be nice to have that history represented in there somewhere.
We'll leave the part out that it was only drained once a year. And it was just, you know, filled up, swam in, drained.
That was a while back before we knew as much as we know now
Yeah.
about sanitation and things like that.
But you still survived.
Yeah, we did. I didn't swim in it, but.
Larry, just a
couple of comments. I'm sorry.
Just had a question for Larry. As far as the repair list here, does this all look like yes?
Oh,
good,
yeah. Me and
needs to
Michelle have
happen?
been talking about this all
I'm
along.
sure you have. Okay.
What's
Good.
possible, and the ideas that the community came up with, Michelle, most of these are just, yeah, they're in the realm of possibility at least.
Great.
Good. I'm glad that, you talked to some of the neighbors. I think that's exciting that they're wanting to see something done with this park. So that's very cool.
Yeah, and I just want to thank Michelle for her initiative. She came to us and then, in fact, was persistent in pursuing this idea with our department, and ended up connecting, and Larry and her have had some conversation. But I really appreciate your initiative and just coming forward and trying to help. This I like this a lot because and it's a little bit what you just said, Brian B, about things that need help. We've talked about our deferred maintenance, and this is one of those parks. We've done the tour, and some of you have been on the tour where we've stopped at this park, and it's one of those, everybody just kind of looks at it and just, what are we doing with this site? Are we going to do anything? It's just really not on our list of, we don't have any future master plan. It's just kind of there. It's low on our, not to say it's not important, but it's just, as far as our projects list, it's just not on there. And we'd love to do, at least fix up what we've got, but it falls on that deferred maintenance that we don't have the funding to make it enough of a priority to get something done. So we appreciate, the idea of rounding up community volunteerism and just kind of sprucing it up a little bit can really create some excitement around it, and maybe get it back into a better use again versus right now. It's very underutilized, I think, and we'd like to see it be used. So it's great. So I think it's nice. And none of what we're talking about is really anything that has to go through an extensive planning process or anything. It's it's maintenance plus just some sprucing up. And really, that's why we wanted to have Michelle come in front of PRAC, is just to make sure that, at least we've kind of vetted it a little bit publicly and make sure there's no concerns, or hopefully support. So.
Possible ideas.
Yes.
Looks great.
Yes.
Was this also presented to the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association?
No.
Because it is in their neighborhood. I didn't know if
I did not even think about
needed
that,
to be done or not, because it really is still being used as a park. It's just taking out one of the tennis courts, and that's the only thing that I could see possibly some of the neighbors complaining about. And I have walked by in the evenings where there were enough people playing tennis and a waiting line. So that does happen once in a while. But I think it was a group of 8 people that were all friends that went down there together. So.
Good point.
Well, I'm the one that suggested going from 2 courts to 1 for safety's sake. Is typically you do have a buffer between courts. I play tennis, and for safety, if you're going to improve the court, it would definitely behoove us to make it safe. And so I am the one that actually suggested taking out 1 set of nets and going down to one nicer tennis court with standards and a net. And if people are there to use it, then provide them with a nice, safe, usable court. So
that's a good point about the neighborhood association. That's a very active neighborhood association. I should probably at least reach out to the president of that and make sure they're not caught by surprise.
Yeah. This was the first park I ever talked to Scott about. I don't know how many years ago when I was first on this committee, and I remember the response. And what I would say, Michelle, is what you're doing is a model of what we need to have happen in the city. I mean, if there's something that needs to be done, citizens, they take care of their community. So I just want to, give you a pat on the back. Really appreciate what you're doing. That's my old neighborhood.
And you'll get some volunteers from the McLaughlin neighborhood too, if you get them on board.
That's good to know.
We-
Yeah, I'll definitely contact
We've
them.
got the contact info. Again, we can help you kind of connect the dots there. Good suggestion.
Okay, if there's not anything else, Michelle, thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you for being here, and it's a great project, and hopefully it'll turn out wonderfully, and other groups will see it happen, and they'll want to do it for their park.
Hopefully the trickle effect.
Yes.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you very much.
Good job. Thank you.
Okay, Parks Day event.
You want to go, Lisa?
Pardon?
Yeah, I can
Go
tell.
for it.
Okay.
You started.
Last month we had some question as to whether we would be moving forward with the event because of Don's departure from our group. And just kind of touching base with him. Well, he is prepared to do the food as he indicated. And we have Optimist Club will run a Frisbee area. They even bought Frisbees to hand out to everybody. So they're kind of excited about being up there. We have one of our volleyball parents who is willing to set up volleyball. I'm looking for outdoor nets. If anybody has outdoor nets, that's one thing I need to find. And then we also have our adult kickball league who is going to come up there and run some kickball.
That's so cool.
So that was fun. We just started it. 8 teams this summer.
Wow.
So I'm excited about that. And then we have, I need to touch base with Adam to find out. Don had talked to him about doing a safety bike clinic.
Yeah, and I remember talking with him. He wants to do it. I don't want to speak for him, but he definitely wants to do that.
Okay, so that's my piece I need to
Yeah.
touch base on. And as far as the our booth setup, I think we've kind of abandoned the idea that we would have a booth set up prior to the event because it's getting a little too close for that. But I think that if we want to move forward with that, which now it's made, we've got it done and put together, and Don has it ready to go. We just have to get the pictures and the maps and get everything assembled. But I think we'll still have time on that day of the event, and then a couple times after that at farmers markets, that we would be able to set it up and do some talking on it. My only problem is I can't transport it because it's too big for me. I don't have a vehicle that I can move it in, and so I would need some assistance with that. But I think we're ready to go forward with it. So I'm kind of excited about that.
Where is this display stored now?
Don has it currently, Don Smith. It's
And-
just plywood at the moment.
I was just mentioning to Larry, we could probably, from staff, obviously we've got trucks, and we could probably help get that transported to the park.
That'd be
and
great.
Would
I
we-
think I might.
Would we want that on site on the 9th?
I think it'd probably be better to put it up that morning of the 10th.
Okay.
What if
What
we-
we
What
could
hours are
do
you
though is
promoting?
potentially,
Hours?
Oh, 10 to 2.
10 to 2.
we could transport it.
10 to 3.
Because our folks are Monday through Friday mostly. We got some weekend help, but it's pretty limited. We could get it to the park. We have at our new restroom building. We have some pretty good storage capacity. We could put it in the shed or in the storage garage area of the new building, and then just be able to pull it out on the event day. So
That'd be great.
We can coordinate with
Okay.
that. So maybe on that Friday the 9th, move it. We'll help out.
Well,
So-
great.
We just
The
have to-
other
I guess
pe-
we've got to figure out with Dawn how to get that and so forth.
Yes, I was even thinking, I don't know, I could have him drop it off at Eastham and we can leave it there until we can get it up to the park.
And we'll help you get it to the park.
Okay. I can always put it in the back of Todd Chemis's car, and he lives across the street, so I can store it for a little while. He has a truck. Or we could take it to Bob's.
Okay.
He's close by.
So what do you need from the rest of us on the committee?
I believe we need folks, we have to figure out our setup time if we need to set up the night before. And then it's really working with Larry to kind of figure out, we had talked about the stage and the sound system, and it's finalizing those details, and if you need our help with that. And then it's just really showing up on the day of the event. I was going to talk to Scott or see if I can just make some little signs for the event areas, like what's going on in those places, and then it's just, it's just people show up. I think, so it's just.
How about the booth arrangement? Is Don gonna, the booth or the tent, whatever you call that?
I'll check with him on bringing the tent. If he doesn't, I have a tent. It's not as big or nice as what he has, but we can certainly use that canopy. It's green, not white. He liked white.
How big of a canopy do you need?
It's like those at the farmer's
10 by 10,
market
10 by
type
12.
Yeah.
I have
things.
Those as well.
access to a lot of stuff.
Okay, great. So
You want
we
something?
can work on that. Okay.
Do you want lines painted too? Do you guys
Oh,
need
on the
lines painted?
field. I need to go up and look at that.
That field's pretty rough.
Is it the kickball field or the softball baseball
The baseball
field?
field's pretty, it's hard packed dirt with loose stuff on top.
Oh.
Not
It
level.
hasn't been watered in quite a while, though. Right? I've been driving by every day and every.
The irrigation's still off due to the construction.
I've noticed the porta potties are gone. I've been worried about those. So,
Yeah, there's been some interruption of watering because of the project that we've been doing there and that kind of thing, so.
is it going to be off until, I mean, for the summer now?
Well, we hope not.
We're working on it.
We're working on it.
That's
We've got some issues there.
pretty dusty and dirty right now.
Could consider
So-
doing that in a grassy area or something. if
Yeah,
we
that's
wanted
just
to.
what I was thinking. If we don't do it, and we
That
we could
might
do
be
the
better.
bicycle safety over there, and then switch it up and put like a kickball over in the grass spot instead. We decided not to do anything with basketball because those courts are so heavily used, is my understanding, that it would upset a few people if we started, like, if we kind of booted them off. But then they can just come and join us, and maybe they'll bring more people to play basketball that day. So that was some feedback that.
Yeah, I don't know though if we reserve the basketball courts and the tennis courts, we could reserve it for your use all day if you wanted to. So that's in the capability of it.
Okay.
So you tell
A lot of use. There are people there all the time,
Yeah.
day and night. They're-
Oh, I know.
I'd rather they come and join us and
Right.
play their game and then come over and hang out and maybe try something else than say,
I-
sorry, you can't use them today.
I think we have enough events going on that we
Yeah.
don't really need to.
Plus, I mean, we could loosely organize games, like you're saying, Lisa, too. Just have
Of
somebody
course.
there or whatever. Hey, let's get together, we'll play 3-on-3 or whatever.
So we need to talk a little bit more about that field area, and I'd really like to I need to just go up there and walk around. I have Brian's lovely map that I've used to label everything, but I want to go get a good visual.
Crayon.
Yeah, it's good.
I
It
was going to
works.
suggest that what sounds like we might want to do is we're getting pretty close to that date. We've been pretty focused on our big event tomorrow and expending a lot of our time and energy and all that kind of stuff. But we're prepared to do the
After that.
event, but we got to kind of switch gears pretty quick. What I think Lisa and Brian or whoever might want to is if we could have a quick meeting, maybe at the beginning of the week, this coming next week,
Okay.
because then we're just a little over a week out, and just do a quick checklist together of what, like you were saying, the sound system and transporting the equipment and whatever else we can do as staff that we're going to help with, and make sure that we know that pretty clearly. And if you need help making signs, printing some things out, whatever, just maybe we could do a quick, either at your office
Sure.
or my office, and I'd say Larry and Denise and I probably meet with whoever wants to meet from the group.
Do you want me to send out a appointment schedule or
That'd be
request?
great. That would
Okay.
be terrific. Yeah, I'd say, soon as we can.
Monday or Tuesday?
Early part of the week, yeah, just to get it going. Thanks.
I'm thinking also that it's not going to be something that's, I mean, it'll be some rudimentary order of events or something. I think that we at least need to all be able to look at something, or maybe even have posted when the lunch hour is, or maybe some directional, not any signage, but just a couple of poster boards or some other sort of information, letting people know. I know we're going to be there at the booth, but if we had some sort of order of events, it's not. I mean, like I said, it's not going to be extensive. And the reason why I'm thinking that way too is I know that we had initially asked you to maybe kick it off for us, for you to be there, Scott, or Scott and Denise, or whomever.
I'm planning to be there, yeah.
Yeah, at the kickoff, and maybe say something, and then maybe, I don't know, maybe at the midway point or some other time, so that you know what we were thinking.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep. Sounds good.
Anything else on that one? Okay. Sounds great. Okay, we'll move on to designated off-leash dog area consideration. And I missed the last meeting, unfortunately, but I saw that there was some discussion of Barclay Park, appropriately named Barclay Park, Atkinson, and Oak Tree, which I had to email Scott about to find out what Oak Tree Park was. So, further discussion on that topic. And what we're looking to do is make recommendations from this group to the City Commission on where we would propose to see this off-leash dog trial take place.
That's correct, yeah. That was a direct request from, I think Mayor Neely kind of initiated, and the commission made that formal request to PrAC to bring something back to, in the interim time until we can build a permanent facility, to designate one of our park sites or a portion of a park site as an off-leash area and see how that goes. So we'll kind of work through that. And then also one other site that, to add on to what you said, Mike, actually Sean Dashler was at the last meeting as a guest, waiting to get appointment, and suggested, as had been discussed previously, this even goes back a few years, the consideration of a part of Wesley Lynn Park in the undeveloped portion as a good possibility. So from there, that's kind of where we're at, and it was just suggested we bring this back again next month, because we were kind of low on numbers of members to discuss and keep the conversation going forward.
Mike? I took a drive around because I didn't know exactly where all these parks were. I couldn't remember the names of them. But I went to Barclay, and that seemed to be a good possibility. What I liked about it was there weren't other competing activities or events, apparatus and things there. So the dogs would have it to themselves. The downside of that is the parking. It's all on-street parking that I could see. Then I went over to I guess it's the Oak Tree. Is that where by the fire station?
That's correct. South End Road, yes.
Boy, parking's horrible there. I mean, I think that'd be risky for the fire department trying to get their trucks in and out in an emergency. So I didn't think that would be a very good option. Very small is also a small park. And then Atkinson Park, I thought that was a good idea. The parking's restricted, but it's kind of up out of the way where there's not a lot of traffic anyway. So I thought that would be a good idea, a good possibility. And I went over to Wesley Lynn, and I wasn't sure about the parking where the space you were talking about. Is it close to the parking, or?
It's the opposite end.
So you'd have to unload the dogs right where all the people are. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So there'd be, if that's an issue, that could be a problem. But there's a lot of space out there, and there's a lot of parking. But you'd have to take the dogs out through all the activity to where the open space is. So I think the two of them are really good possibilities, Barclay and Atkinson, from what I could see.
I've got a question about Wesley Lynn, because it ties to what Bob was just saying. What's the status of the other end of that park where there is, it's gravel access, but there is a driveway for the house that the city owns, and some area there not too far off of whatever street that is, I don't remember.
Leland.
Yeah, Leland.
That could be unofficially used for parking, or is that really stretching beyond what would be acceptable?
Well, so we acquired the portion of the property on more the north side of the kind of the person-made walkway through there. The person that owns the south side of that, if you continued Wesley Lynn from its parking lot all the way to Leland Road, in that undeveloped area, we own, basically split it down the middle, and we own, looking at Leland Road from the parking lot, the right half of that, just to give you kind of a rough idea of what we're talking about. The person that owns the other half is planning to develop a small housing development with 8 or 9 units, and we've been working off and on with them for about 5 or 6 years, and they're still planning to do so. The access down the middle is kind of a joint use arrangement. It's a pretty interesting the way that it's deeded and written in is they have the city owns it, but they have permanent access rights that go way back a number of years. So if that gets developed, they will be required to put in a roadway with sidewalks, and what we're doing is working with them. I think we've talked about this with PrAC, but it's been a while since it's come back up. It probably even goes back to maybe when Sean was on the committee that we've been talking about this. We're proposing on our kind of portion of that and extending over into our part of the property a wider pathway, because we get a lot of people using it. If you've gone by there at all, it's a constant flow of people from across Leland Road. There are in the hundreds now of new housing units and more going in on Pease Road and all in that area. It's very well utilized from that side. So, I really have had a goal of developing an access point from that side of it. And eventually we need to master plan exactly what that's going to look like. But in the time between when we can master plan it and actually do something, which is probably going to be a while, would be great just to create that access point off of Leland, and there is some parking on Leland, some on-street parking. It's on the other side, but we've got a well-marked crosswalk in there now that I worked with our Public Works Department to get in there a couple of years ago. So the point is, if this development goes forward, we're going to have a better access in from that side. Eventually, I think what the vision has been discussed is whatever the amenities might be in the new part of the park, at a minimum, we're probably going to put another parking lot on that side coming in from Leland, because eventually you're going to have, it's a pretty long, as far as the linear, park. And I know I kind of went around on that answer a little bit, but I wanted to also give everybody understanding of what the big picture of that site is to help you understand that. So,
Good cars parked there now?
not really, no. So cutting to that part of that, I guess I didn't really answer that question, is you really can't just pull in and park there right now. It's not set up to do that. So we wouldn't encourage that at all right now. Safety issues and just because of the way it is. So
I thought I would probably lean towards maybe Barclay. I guess my concern about Wesley Lynn too would be the sheer number of people that are in that area and the higher potential for dog and people interaction that we don't want. So until we fence an area, which eventually, but I know that's where long term we're headed to, but short term, I think that's not going to work for that park. That's just my opinion. I don't know.
I'd have to agree with you. There's way too many kids up there. I mean, we run sports up there year round. So, and that, that doesn't include everybody coming in from the houses. There are so many kids out there.
Tons.
And all it takes is one. And
Sean.
The reason I brought this up, I live on the parks, so I see who's doing it. It is a dog park. So my point is, if we want to test something, do it at the place that's being used as a dog park. Why go to another park that's never been a dog park and tell those neighbors, hey, this is now going to be a dog park? That into Wesley Lynn's a dog park, whether we like it or not. The other issue with access, I agree with you that it would be odd to park at the parking lot on a busy day and try to go clear across. But what most people don't realize is right next to this new piece of land is another easement with tons of on-street parking.
Where's that?
Are you familiar with the trail?
Yeah.
The pathway? If you're going from the parking lot all the way to the other end, and then you follow the asphalt, it goes out through another easement into the neighborhood with plenty of on-street parking. So essentially you could park and be in the dog park within 100 feet
It's on street parking.
So, yeah, that's Silver
Fox.
Fox, and then Leland, just in that development, you can come that way, you can come
Right.
that way. So, yeah.
See, to me, it's kind of a no-brainer to pick that, and I'm not looking at it for my own use, which I may use it, but well, let's pick a place that's already being used, especially if this is a test.
Are the current users of that park, are they mostly residents in the area that just walk over there anyway and wouldn't need a place to park their car? Or are they coming in from outside the area?
I think that's hard to judge. I don't really talk to them because I think, one, it's not a sanctioned event. I'm sure they're neighborhood people, but when I've been into other parks that are in other neighborhoods, I don't see a congregation of 8 or 10 people and 4 or 5 dogs continually through every evening in those parks. Hillendale, I don't see that. Here I do. Tonight, let's go right now, and there will be 4 dogs out there with people. Now, granted, they're probably the neighborhood, but I have no way of telling. And like Scott said, really, there's a concentration of new homes there. So rather than picking a neighborhood that's kind of consistently been familiar with what's offered in that area, these people are trying to create something, in my opinion. You know, Wesley Lynn has been evolving for years. New homes are moving in, people are trying to explore. And right now, that's a completely... the other concern of mine was soil. You go into Barkley, that the ground or any other park, the ground should have been tilled up at some point and grass seed was put down. This area, it was a field from the previous owner. So Larry's never been in there with equipment and professionally made this a park. There's no sprinkler system. There's nothing. It's just a field mow once a week. So that was the other thought for me, is you're not ruining the soil either. Dogs tend to walk in if you look at the fenced areas, they tend to walk a path around them. At every dog park I've ever been to, they have real worn out sections. We don't care. We're going to master plan it and do something else in a few years. Even if this doesn't choose to be, even if that's a purpose that's not determined for here later on, to me, it's a free, no harm, no foul.
There is one drawback about the site. We've had 3 cases of parvo.
Some kind of bacterial thing or something.
Yeah, some kind of bacterial infection related to dogs from that site. It is damp. We've had some neighbors express some concerns about the transmission of this disease back there. I can't verify it. We didn't investigate it, but there is some wet areas back there, and I know it is spread through water and ground contamination. But now whether it came from this site, we didn't verify 100% either, though. So, but that was brought up by some neighbors earlier this spring.
If we use that site, would we fence off that part?
No.
So how would you control where the dogs would go then?
I think now if you watch it, they're so far away from anything because there's the hills that block from the ball fields.
There's kind of that natural, or not natural, I'm sure you built it, the berm.
Yeah, the berms,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, they were
So
added.
we'd be talking about on the other side of the berm, and, I would envision there'd be some sort of signage
The sign, yeah.
along there.
Yeah,
And it's, that, I think that's the whole reason for it being a test. It's probably, I imagine that council's going to put it on, or commission's going to put it on a timeline and monitor it, and hopefully there'd be, it'll be self-policing so that it does turn out to be a positive thing.
Is there any type of liability for dog bites?
And I
If
don't-
you look from May to November, you have sports 6 days a week up there. That's my concern.
Dogs have already been there, is my answer.
Well, we're going to invite
But
a
if you
lot more.
You invite
Open
an
it up.
open leash where dogs can run. What happens when that first kid gets bit?
That'll be the case wherever we go, won't it?
True.
But aren't most dog parks fenced?
Well, that's
Well,
what
this is not a dog park.
It's
This is an
off-leash.
off-leash
It's just
area.
an
Just an
off-leash
off-leash area. for dog
Yeah.
park.
Right.
But it would be signed, correct?
Yes.
Okay, because I
would
went in
assume
and
so.
looked at the signage, and it was kind of cool. I took all of their rules and condensed them down into 8 rules that I thought were important. So if you guys want me to read these off. Have you guys done that? Looked at their site, the AKC
Which
site?
one?
The American Kennel Club.
Oh, uh-huh.
And they're, talk about off-leash dog area rules. And this is for fenced or unfenced. That number one, dogs must never be left unattended. So
Leash
within
unattended.
sight and, visual, and the dog needs to respond to verbal and sight commands. All dogs must be legally licensed and vaccinated and wear a visible dog license. Handlers are required to clean up after their dogs. Unruly dogs are not allowed and must be removed at the first sign of aggression. Dogs under 4 months of age and female dogs in heat are prohibited. Handler is limited to a maximum of 2 dogs. Handlers are responsible for any injuries caused by the dogs under their control, and users of the facility do so at their own risk. Neither the City of Oregon City nor the Oregon City Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee shall be liable for any injury or damage caused by any dog in the off-leash area.
And Larry, you got to police all that.
Well, that's the key. That's really good, Joyce. I think we've looked at some of that kind of stuff. I think a couple of key points for us from the staff perspective that I want to go back to when we started talking about this is, and again, for the new members that haven't been involved in the full discussion here, but we're working towards building a permanent dog park at some point in the city. We have, that's a goal. It's a PrAC goal, it's a staff goal. I think everybody wants to get it done. It's just, we've got a limited amount of funding to do park projects and, where we fit it in and all that kind of stuff. We're working on some thoughts about that. So the idea was, why not just designate either a park or some part of a park as off-leash and sign it appropriately that says this is an off-leash dog, area, but put some signs up to make people understand the, responsibilities. And it really is going to be basically a self-policing issue. We don't have enforcement. In the Parks Department, we have no enforcement staff. We have no enforcement authority. We don't have rangers or park police or anything like that some cities or counties or state parks or whatever might have. We have a code enforcement department that works, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 basically. That is a very small staff. They're basically like 3 enforcement officers doing parking patrol, getting people to abate massive nuisance problems with their properties and things like that. So occasionally we'll get a little bit of help when we can, if we have a particular park. Like Rivercrest tends to be one of those parks where we get a lot of complaints about dogs and not being on leash and leaving the dog waste and all that kind of stuff. We'll call the code enforcement folks. We'll ask them to help us a little bit. They'll do a little bit of a kind of a concentrated enforcement presence and maybe write a citation or 2, or maybe at least just give some warnings and show up. But that's about all they can give us. So let's just keep in mind, and I want to be real with what we're talking about here, is it's very much going to be a self-policed area. It's going to be up to folks to do that. We're not going to be out, if people call me and say, somebody's dog is running amok, I'm not going to be able to run over there and fix that problem. And it's going to be up to folks to do. So that's why we're kind of talking about it as a test case, like how does it work, and conflicts with other uses. I think John might be bringing up some pretty good points about the use, but we could potentially run into that anywhere. And let me just make one last comment then about the liability. We'd probably have to run some of this past our company that insures the city, but we're well insured for liability coverage. This isn't probably that unusual or anything that, as far as being worried about the city's liability, I don't think it's a really big concern unless we're doing something really negligent or promoting something that's just really dangerous. But and certainly I don't think any of you have any liability or culpability in this, but we also have recreational immunity laws in the state that give a lot of protection to park agencies, public park agencies. That if you're operating a park and people are using the park and doing park-related things, it's hard to bring lawsuits against those entities because of some good state rules that say, hey, people were just doing things in a park, and if somebody got injured because of that, that was at their risk. So there's a lot of protection. Not that you can't get sued, but it's difficult. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure everybody understood all those things.
I also wanted to add, just by nature of my profession and my personal life,
There's a couple of dog parks that are kind of related to the types of destinations you're looking at, being a very busy park and then having a dog park on the far end. Happy Valley Park has that situation. So if you guys wanted to, take a look at how that works and integrated, it's an extremely busy park with ball fields, soccer fields, volleyball, picnic, and all that. And the dogs have to go through that area from the parking to the dog park area, which is on the other side of the creek. And then Westland has an open off-leash area in Marius Young Park, which is also ballpark, highly used, heavily trails, a lot of people. So 2 very different types of off-leash areas, but kind of in the realm of some of the vicinities we're looking at.
That second example is a really good point. Marius Young, I think you said it's totally unfenced.
It's
just
wide open.
It's a wide open area. So that's probably a good example of what we're talking about. It's a little bit more formalized because they've got a lot of signage and some infrastructure, but not fenced, and it's a little bit parceled off from the rest of some of the active areas. But that's a really good example. That might be something that people might want to go take a look at if you get a chance for the next discussion or whatever. So, yeah, good point about that.
Well, I would like to be able to come up with a short list to give to the commission. They've asked for it. We missed a meeting or two, consensus, or what's the word? Quorum, thank you. So it's been a while. Does the group feel like we can, whether we vote or show hands or whatever, on which ones we think would be the best to present to them?
Are you thinking of like 2 or 3 or something like that?
I would say maybe 1, 2, 3. Here's how we think they might work. And obviously it's the commission's decision, but they did ask for PrAC to come forward with that kind of a list.
I think for access.
Can we take public comments?
Absolutely.
Okay. Mr. Gifford?
As long as he identifies himself.
I need to fill out a slip.
You're good.
Virtual slip.
Mr. Chair, committee, my name is William Gifford. I live in Oregon City. I'm just used to saying that a lot. I don't know if the committee has sketched out even some ideas as to what might be desirables of such a park, insofar as, is there going to be water available? Are there going to be pickup bags available and trash cans available? And some non-muddy spot that dogs could at least be wiped off before they got back in their vehicles or got back on the trail or whatever. I don't know if you have a list of criteria that you would like to see, because some of the parks, like Berkeley, great park, it's already fenced on 2 sides and local, there's no water, and there's no trash cans. So those are 2 things that I don't know if there's going to be any minimal investment in this other than just putting up signs for guidelines for self-policing, or if you have thought about other such guidelines.
I would say from the staff, we've certainly would, we know there's going to be an increased use potentially. We'll be looking at the dog bag dispensers wherever we do this. If there aren't already some at the site, we'll invest in those. That's a pretty small investment. And garbage cans, that's kind of a small investment, but beyond that, getting into other things, that's kind of where we said, we're trying to identify something that we don't have to do much right now, so that we can, when we do, we're going to do it right. When we build the dog park, we're going to figure out what the amenities that we want to put in there and so forth, and do all that. But right now we're talking pretty well just taking an area as it is, but we know we're going to have to do a couple things like the dispensers and garbage, and might be 1 or 2 other little things like that.
Signage.
The signage
At your own
was
risk,
for
right.
sure.
Yeah.
Mike, I can make a recommendation,
Yes.
not a motion, that because this is a new topic for 3 people and it hasn't been discussed in a few months, that we take this home tonight, come back to the next meeting. Presumably we won't meet in August, we'll meet in September, and have a plan where we can put together a very specific recommendation to the commission. 3 parks in order of preference with maybe a few amenities that we intend. So we're very specific. I don't think we should go to them with just, here's kind of 3 that we've talked about and thrown up. And that way, there's a lot of weight to it, and then I'd recommend the chair or vice chair attend that meeting and present it to them. And then, I know we're running late tonight, we can move on to the next item.
And I agree, I appreciate what you just said there, Sean, that not being vague, but being really specific, because the commission isn't really, to my knowledge, isn't spending time thinking about this. And then when you go and say, here's a few ideas, here's our preferences, they're going to have a hard time figuring out how to decide. I think it needs to be a pretty specific recommendation. I completely agree with that part of it. And I wanted to also add on to that as just one final thought for me is there was no limitation on what the direction from the commission was to say that you couldn't maybe do this at a couple of parks. So if we come up with even a couple of sites that seem to make sense, and there's pluses and minuses, and then not concentrating it all into one site, I think has been talked about a couple different times. Not overwhelming one either site or one neighborhood, that you might have a couple of spots that you want to think about recommending, because there's nothing that says we can't consider doing that. There may be reasons to do that or not do that, but I just wanted to put that out there. So,
is there any staff reasons not to?
We might give that a little more thought if we're going to be able to. I like the idea too of coming back. There's no urgency other than people are already using our parks illegally with off-leash stuff, but that's just, it is what it is. People do that. Most people are pretty good, responsible people, even though they're violating our rules. But I'd like to make it so that people could legally do that. But we probably, as far as the staff thinking about that, I probably want to give that a little more consideration. I was just now thinking of that, so that gives us a couple months to ponder and bring that discussion back. So.
I think the idea of more than one makes sense too, for just access reasons.
I'd like I'd like to see one on the top of the hill and one in this area.
Okay, so the sites that we're talking about are back end of Wesley Lynn, Atkinson, Barclay, Oak Tree is too small, isn't it?
Well, that's right next to a very busy road.
Yeah.
That would be my other.
I would say that one falls off.
Next to the fire department. I drove down there the other day.
So
there's no parking.
Are there others? Waterboard?
I mentioned that the other day.
Yeah, that's a whole.
I mean, that's because there's
nothing else up there. But
you wouldn't have to worry about cars running over your dog.
I wouldn't suggest.
I'm sure it's
not,
used. I'm sure it's used a lot that way now, but
it's not really a running area.
Yeah, there's
it's
not
more
really
of a trail.
like an open area. I think the idea would be, but
Well, and part of our goal is to get feedback if this is a test. So we want it in a place that's currently being violated, maybe.
I think
they all are. They all are. In fact,
honestly, every park is a dog park. I mean,
every
field, everywhere.
At the commission meeting, Mayor Neely brought up Barclay. He said, I'm across. He lives across the street from it. He said, it is an off-leash dog park.
Yeah.
So, okay. Are there others that we should put on this list?
I think that's a.
I
like that list.
Is there anything up in the like up Holcomb that just from serving another part of the community?
Park Place Park is about it over there.
Is there any area? I just can't remember how much area is.
There is.
That's a nice wide open park.
There's some open space up there.
Park Place should be on there too.
Okay.
So, what is the list again? Just
Wesley Lynn, Atkinson, Barclay, and Park Place.
And what's the name of that park? William, it's not Barclay Park. That's off of Holmes Lane. That goes
Stafford.
Stafford Park. I'd like to put Stafford Park on the list.
Because that's used a lot too.
By dog owners or other? Okay.
Dog owners.
Oh, there's a picnic table there.
Which one's
There is
Stafford?
a picnic table.
Stafford. It's on Holmes, just almost right across the street from the museum there. What's that?
Rose
Rose
House.
by the water.
Right.
Oh,
It's much closer.
The
to,
long, narrow one.
Yes.
Yep, that's exactly.
Yeah, that came up when we talked about sites, and there was a parking issue that kept us from considering that
That
as
was
a
the permanent site,
permanent
but that might
site.
be a good temporary
site.
just
Good.
designated area. Yeah.
Good point.
Okay.
So then between now and what I assume will be our September meeting, because we'll talk later, but I guess we probably won't have an August meeting, to whatever degree you care to, your homework is strengths and weaknesses of these 5 sites and amenities, to Mr. Gifford's comment, necessary and desirable amenities that can be done knowing that this is a temporary idea. Okay? That sounds like a plan.
Okay.
All right, good. We'll move on to Glen Oak Road and Filbert Run Park Master Plan update. Scott.
Really quickly, and I appreciate everybody hanging in for a pretty lengthy meeting tonight, but that Willamette Falls thing I think was really important, so we had some good other discussion here too. This is just an update, and then I have one request of the commission or the committee. So, as you know, we're planning on hiring one firm or one consultant to do the master plan of both of these park sites, and I anticipate having the request for proposals advertised by around the 1st of August, which is basically towards the end of next week. So we're on that timeline. It keeps kind of getting sliding back a little bit, but that just has to do with workloads and other priorities. The request I have of PRAC is that so we're going to do an RFP, request for proposals, for consultant services to design these 2 parks and to develop the vision. This is a pretty standard process that we do, and typically what we do is we solicit the proposals, and we'll get any number of those, anywhere from a couple to maybe a dozen or somewhere in between, and then we have a process of scoring and ranking, and then possibly interviewing maybe the top 2 or 3 or whatever. Kind of depends on how the numbers are, and we put together a committee. Usually it's staff, and in this case, I'd like to ask that PRAC have a representative, or at least one, and maybe a couple if you'd like to do that on that committee. And we might think specifically in terms of the areas that these parks are in, whether that makes a difference or not in terms of kind of the geographic representation of the committee. I'm not really sure. That's sort of up to you. But I'd like to request that you designate, and probably need to do this tonight because we may be well into that selection process before the next meeting happens. So if you want to figure that out and let me know what you think.
Where is Filbert Run Park?
Off of Central Point, about a quarter of a mile south of Partlow Road off of Central Point, a newer neighborhood in there. It's a 3.5 acre site that we purchased a few years ago that's going to be a small neighborhood park.
Well, the Glen Oak property is sort of in my neighborhood, and barring other people wanting to be involved, I would like to volunteer.
Chairman, if you need a second, I'm happy to help too. Done that before.
Anyone else?
How big is the park on Glen Oak?
Big. A little over 9 acres.
Yeah, that's a big site.
Probably should put a dog park in there.
Probably should. Part of the reason why I wanted to be involved in planning of it, because it's perfect. So, is the group okay with me serving on that and Sean as the backup? And if it turns out that you want more than one PRAC member, we'll both do it. Right?
Yes, I'm
Yep,
sorry. I was
okay.
working on
Is that-
typing and thinking. Can you say that one more time just so I'm very clear on what I just heard?
So, I'm volunteering to be the representative, Sean as a second representative backup, and if it turns out you want 2 from PRAC, it would be both of us. Everybody all right with that?
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Okay. I did mention this to the neighborhood association. I got Scott's approval to let the cat out of the bag a little bit, and was at a neighborhood association meeting 2 nights ago. And they were very excited to hear that at least the first step is being taken. And of course, the first question I was asked was, when is dirt going to start moving? And
the second big step, the first step is buying the property, and then we've done that. But the next big step to doing that is we got to have a vision so that we know what we're looking at in terms of how to go about raising the funds and going after grants and the way that we do that. So,
and that's exactly what I said. Obviously, this has to be out of the way before that. So at least this moves it down the road.
Yep.
So, okay, we'll move on. Camping and park, consideration of rule changes.
I think in lieu of the fact that we're kind of running late and there's no particular timeliness about this issue, what I'd like to do is defer this to the next meeting. I may send you an email or something just to kind of let you know a little bit in advance so you can be thinking about it. It has to do with a waiver of some camping and parks rules that were related to a specific request that we got recently from the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde. They did an event at Clackamat Park last weekend on Sunday, I think, or Saturday. And our commission had to make a quick kind of declare an emergency, do an emergency ordinance declaration because the commission specifically got the request and they wanted to meet this request. It was like an overnight tribal encampment thing, kind of a historical, cultural thing. It was pretty cool. But then it kind of brought up the whole issue about the need that we do have some camping and parks. And so I don't want to get into the commission then did an emergency declaration, a 30-day waiver of that rule just to make this thing work at the advice of our attorneys. But then said we specifically would like PRAC to give us some recommendations about how to do this in the future, like come up with some permanent either fix or adjustment to our ordinance or rules. So that's what we need to deal with at some point. I'll send you the information so you can be thinking about it and at least have some knowledge of it, and then maybe we can take that up at the next meeting.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any other general business? PRAC member reports. Sean? Nothing. Okay. Caught you by surprise. Bob?
Just a comment, quick comment. I noticed a piece in the Oregonian about a new developer for the landfill site, so maybe we have another interesting episode coming up out at Rossman Landfill. And I'll give you this to read later, but it's kind of a quick report from the South End Concept Planning Committee. And the next meeting is set for September 25th. And just give you some ideas on the themes or concepts that are emerging from the input they're getting. And so you can read that at your leisure.
Great.
That's all, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you. Brian?
Nothing.
Okay. Other Brian?
Nothing from me.
This, for the benefit of the new members, this is just your opportunity, whether if you're on vacation and you see a cool park or a program that we need to know about or something that's going on in our parks, whatever, this is just your opportunity to share your knowledge with the group. So,
Beaches in Hawaii are nice.
I could say something in that the city owns the train station right now, the depot station, is that right?
That's correct.
That building?
The building.
Okay, and so there's discussion about possibly having that building open and possibly run by volunteers. So keep your eyes and ears open for more information to come on the Oregon City Depot.
And actually, that's owned by the Urban Renewal
Yeah,
Agency
I was just going to say that, yeah.
Of
Okay.
the City of Oregon City.
So the Urban Renewal Commission has been developing some ideas, and they've done some proposals and things like that, so yeah.
Cool. Okay. Staff reports.
Okay. Tomorrow night is the end of the Oregon Trail celebration and concert on the green, big event. Look forward to seeing hopefully some of you there, or all of you. I mean, I would love to see all of you there, but I'm sure not everybody can. But I put a little flyer thingy just as sort of your last reminder, and tell your friends and your neighbors and anybody that might be interested. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Looking forward to that. Just to let you know, we have entered into a new 5-year license agreement. That's basically a different term for a lease agreement with Sportcraft Marina. So it's a 5-year agreement that started on July 1st. The City Commission just approved it at their last meeting. If you are interested in details about that, I'd be happy to provide copies of the agreement to anybody that might be. I didn't bring it, not expecting that everybody would be, or maybe you are, but let me know. I could email it, or if you have questions, we'd be happy to discuss those. The Ripple Effect bike rack art, this is just another kind of an FYI. I think I mentioned a little bit about this previously, but kind of in the same, along the same lines of what we did at Clackamet recently at the entrance with the new art piece that went in that was called the Ripple Effect, and the salmon kind of swimming upstream and jumping on the big rock at the entrance to Clackamet. The same Clackamas County Arts Alliance got some funding, and the same artist was selected to do some functional bike racks that are art pieces in 3 cities, Oregon City, West Linn, and Milwaukee, and we've been working with them. We selected the end of the Oregon Trail site because of just for a number of reasons that is where that next piece will be installed. So we're working with the artist on that. This is just to let you know we're doing that. I think it's going to be a really neat piece. It'll be art and function together. So, and then let's see, Mountain View Cemetery wash station report. Actually, Joyce brought some questions forward to the committee previously, and we told Prac that we would bring back a staff report just as to address the questions, or if you have any other questions or whatever. So I'm going to ask Larry to give you a report about our wash station at the cemetery, which is also our parks maintenance location.
So we constructed a wash-off station at Mountain View Cemetery, and what it is it's a 20 by 40 asphalt pad, and we take our mowers up there and wash off grass, and then as excuse me, as we dig graves, our trucks get mud in the back of them. We wash out the mud on top on this washout rack also, and each day we clean it up, dispose of it properly. So what we have is water runs off the asphalt pad, and that's all that's left after we're done. So everything else is picked up and disposed of, and I hope that answers. And it's been inspected by staff, Gail Johnson, who is in charge of our water quality for the city, for Public Works. She has inspected all of the wash stations, storage places where we store spoils, material, things like that. So it has been inspected and approved of. So is there any other particular questions?
So the water just runs off the pad and makes it muddy all around it, or waters the grass around it. Then the hard stuff stays on the pad that you guys then sweep up and dispose of in your other disposal areas.
Yep.
Okay, so in the washing of this equipment, there's never any oils or other things that...
Out of the back of the truck, no. Possibly off of the mowers. Usually we're washing the decks underneath and cleaning off underneath, so there could possibly be a little bit of rinsate grease, but no oils or anything like that, I don't think. So.
And you don't use any solvents?
We don't use any solvents, no. All it is just a hydrant. So no, it's not washing vehicles or anything else. It's rinsing off trucks and the mowers, and that's all.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Thanks, Larry and Joyce. And then recreation report. Denise distributed the copies of our monthly report. Just for the new members to know, we give you lots more information than you probably want or can read, but we're going to do that anyway just to make sure that we say that we've tried to inform you. So you've got some monthly recreation report information. We've got a lot going on. Summer concerts are going great. All of our programs and activities are very, very busy and very full. We got the movies in the park coming up at Wesley Linn in August. Those are a blast if you get a chance to check any of those out. And then, Denise, you want to add anything else to that?
We're really busy. You can see on the reports that in our rec and aquatics program, we do have waiting lists, and we're just trying to see how we can facilitate that staffing-wise as well as our facilities. So we're always looking for creative ways to expand ourselves, but also our worst enemies, because we are trying to expand ourselves with as many limited people as we have. The other things that we have been accomplishing in the last little bit are the EOT, stairs, were replaced for safety and code violation, or not safety and code, just because they were deteriorating. So those have been replaced. We'll have them open tomorrow morning, and then the final finishing will occur towards the beginning of the next week.
Which stairway was
It's the one closest to Washington off of the last wagon. So it goes
Okay.
onto a big open
The one
pad.
up to the map?
Yes,
Where? Okay.
up to the map. So those were fixed extensively. And then Rivercrest restroom is finalized and complete. We still have some punch list items to complete, but it's operational and open, as well as the spray park.
The spray park is running now, too.
Good. Great.
Thanks, Denise. Just one other thing. You see some a packet of some photos of Kanema Neighborhood Park, our new park. That's just for fun. Today I printed that off because I was working on we're putting in an application or a proposal, I guess I would call it, for the Oregon Recreation Parks Association. They have an annual awards program, and they have a number of categories that you can nominate, personnel for things or projects, and they have a design award for facilities and parks, and we decided to nominate Kanema Park under this design category because it's such a unique site and so interesting, and the partnerships with Metro and the gateway into the Metro natural spaces and stuff. But we submitted that, or we're submitting that tomorrow, but as part of that we had to do some photos, and the photo package that's there is what we're submitting, and I just thought it was so cool that I just wanted to share that with you. Some great aerial photos and then some really cool before and after pictures of what we did at that park. It's just really a neat accomplishment. I know it's been open for a while, but that just kind of came up, and I just thought I would share that with you.
And 3 pictures of William Gifford.
I was
among
gonna
the
say.
pictures.
Yeah, I saw
Of
them.
course.
What can we
He's
say?
hey, William Gifford is everywhere.
I didn't. I
And
didn't.
so you can't take a picture in the city without probably him being there. And that's all I have. Thank you.
I had a question about.
Yes.
Just real quickly on the Sportcraft thing, they had some requirements to meet as part of that agreement that was signed 5 years ago. Did they achieve all those?
We're still kind of finishing up some of those, but yeah, it's been the obligations have basically been met, and I don't want to get into too much detail, but again, I can, if you want to talk, or I'd be glad to send you the new agreement, but we've or changed some of our language to make sure that there's a little bit more teeth in meeting some of our obligations that we've asked for, so.
Okay, anything else?
Just discussing about
August,
the next meeting.
yes.
We usually don't meet in August. Is that the preference of the committee again, or do you want to do that? I mean, that's been the...
Anybody see a pressing need?
To meet?
Yes.
We better meet before August 10th.
Yeah, but that's...
Right, that's the subcommittee.
And then we're going to meet August 10th.
Right.
And then,
That is our monthly crack meeting, right?
No, those are meetings. Those are meetings because they're not being recorded.
okay.
The gathering.
So that if you don't have an August meeting, as is normal, the next meeting would be on September 26th, just to let you know.
Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
So we can go to the last concert.
Yeah,
Very good.
that's right. Okay.
And the volunteer appreciation thing at the concert was already mentioned. I think you've all received an invitation by now?
Yes.
Yeah, August 8th.
8th.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a fun time.
It is.
It's a fun time, and the mayor and the commission serve food. It's a good time. Okay. Seeing nothing else, we'll adjourn. I apologize for the length of the meeting, but as Scott said, it was very important information, so we'll